Hey, good Thursday, folks. Great to see you. I got a good bit to talk about in today's video with an ongoing storm system bringing severe weather and winter weather through portions of the country. And then I've got my eyes on about 7 to 10 days from now, a pattern's going to set up that could once again be favorable for a big winter storm across portions of the country. And I'll let you know who that is that could see that impactful weather as we start looking ahead into February. Now, if you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Gerald. I'm a meteorology major at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte. And if you haven't already, go ahead and like the video, subscribe, and hit that bell for the latest notifications. That's a great way to stay up to date with the latest model guidance and a breakdown of that guidance as we continue on through what has been a very crazy year so far, and a year that feels like it has been going on for a decade now, but I assure you it's still only January. So we'll hopefully get into February soon and see what it has in store for us. Also, go ahead, comment, let me know where you're watching from, what you're seeing, and with that said, let's go ahead and dive on into the data. Now, starting with satellite imagery on this Thursday, you can kind of already see where we've got our active storm system at, this big plume of kind of infrared kind of blown up here on the map. This is that storm system that is firing off some strong storms and just some good old-fashioned heavy rainfall for other folks. Now, throughout the day today, this is going to continue to push east and northeast and eventually running into this area of very cold air trapped up into Canada, and we could see a sliver of some snowfall by tomorrow and tomorrow night through portions of the northeast. And then after that, that's again when we'll turn our eyes to the next big storm potential that I'm watching. Now, taking a look at current radar as well, also kind of showing that storm system very well. Another thing I want to mention, we do have some pretty good snow ongoing today into Colorado Springs, Pueblo, back towards Denver, and then up into kind of the Fort Morgan area, and even Sterling seeing some of that wintry weather. And this will definitely add up to a noticeable amount. So if you happen to live in Colorado, definitely let me know what you're seeing out there. But as for rain and severe weather, that's all bottled up near Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, and then getting into the Ohio and Tennessee river valleys by this afternoon. Now, the severe weather threat is going to come along this kind of southern periphery through our warm sector this afternoon. And I'll tell you, we are going to run the threat for a potential tornado or two in that region, as we do have some pretty impressive wind shear values out there and just enough instability to support those updrafts beginning to rotate. And we'll talk about that here in just a moment. But to the north of there, kind of through Tennessee, Kentucky, back through Missouri, even into Oklahoma, Kansas, and eventually through the Ohio Valley later today, just a good old-fashioned soaking and a pretty good amount of rain on the way. Some folks going to pick up a couple inches of rainfall. I know it's January and you hear a couple of inches of precip and you're thinking snow. Well, this time around it's going to be rain as we have that warmer pattern that is locked in after what was a brutally cold January for most folks here in the lower 48. Now, let's go ahead and kind of talk about those alerts today. We do have a pretty active map with flood watches up for those areas that I just mentioned that could see some heavy rain. In fact, even a couple flash flood warnings, looks like including right around the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and then some flood watches up into the mountains of West Virginia and then through the Alleghenies, where, again, it's going to be actually too warm for snow. So all of that precip could turn into some river flooding concerns as that rain works on through. And then to the north, you see winter weather advisories. That I think is actually due to some leftover snow from yesterday, where that could be preemptively preparing for our next winter weather event. It's actually something that's a great question, but either way, we are seeing impacts up that way due to winter weather. And then if you're watching back into Colorado, we've got winter weather advisories, winter storm warnings into the mountains of northern New Mexico there, where we've seen some snow over the past little bit, and we'll continue to see lingering snow today. And then look at the Pacific Northwest. Winter storm watch is now into effect for our next storm system that we will discuss in today's video, and that one could drop big snowfall totals for you folks up into the PNW and then into the northern Rockies. All right, so that's the current alerts and advisories. Let's talk about the setup a little bit for this storm system. We've been talking about it for a couple of days. We had a big piece of energy kind of stuck out near Southern California and into the Four Corners region. Well, that is finally getting dislodged and pushed to the east throughout the day today, and eventually overnight tonight into tomorrow will get pushed into the Ohio Valley and even on into the northeast by tomorrow night. Now, between now and then, and we'll kind of time it out for you, we are going to continue to see that severe weather threat today, that heavy rainfall threat today into tomorrow, and then right around here, we've got this very cold air bottled up into Canada. That's going to overlap just enough with our storm energy here that we're going to get a band of some snow kind of between the two through upstate New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and then into Maine overnight Friday and into Saturday. And then after that, that's when we're watching that next storm potential going into later this weekend and the start of next week. And that'll just be the start of what I think will be a pretty active pattern to start February. Alrighty, so talking about the severe weather threat a little bit more today, we do have a level 2 out of 5 slight risk up for severe weather for really much of Louisiana from Monroe back down to Alexandria, Lake Charles. This includes Beaumont and the Houston area for this afternoon and evening, and then a marginal risk for Little Rock into New Orleans, Baton Rouge, back over towards College Station, Austin. And again, per usual, these storms will move from the west to the east across this area, so the threat dying down sooner in Austin and College Station, and then going into the overnight towards the Jackson, Mississippi area and kind of up the Mississippi River Valley. So that's kind of the setup today. And if we take a look at the different threats on the map, tornadoes are a real concern today. We've got a 5% chance of a tornado within a 25-mile radius in that brown color, and then a 2% in the green color, which I know doesn't sound like a lot, but that is a considerably higher chance than a normal day. So you're going to want to go ahead, stay weather aware, have a way to get watches, warnings, and advisories should they be posted for where you live. And we're back getting closer to severe weather season. Getting into, March, April, and May, that time frame right around the corner, and we generally start to see these threats build up even as early as now in January and February into the Deep South, including Dixie Alley. And that's something we'll need to watch and go ahead and just kind of get that reminder again that we are entering that time of the year. And then we go to tomorrow, also a small tornado threat tomorrow for southern Alabama from Montgomery over to Columbus, Georgia, back down to Dothan, Panama City, Apalachicola, Pensacola, Mobile. A week ago, we had record snow here. A week later, a tornado threat. That's just how it goes into portions of the southern United States, and today will be no different, including tomorrow. So that's kind of the threat level there with severe weather. Let's go ahead and time it out for you. What is this going to look like? Well, let's go ahead and refresh the page, get the latest model data. This is brand new, hot off the press, high resolution, rapid refresh model. And here we go. We'll move it ahead into time. Now, as we get into this afternoon, again, our warm sector, not hard to find. Here's our warm front. Here's kind of our cold front. And anything kind of between the two is where we're going to have enough instability for that potential of strong to severe storms. Now, we've got a leftover kind of messy squall line from last night currently working through East Texas. Eventually, I think this is going to really run into enough instability for higher and severe weather potential right around here. This is this evening. Once it gets into southern Arkansas, into Louisiana, you can see some of those brighter returns showing up on radar, indicating to me that the instability has risen enough for these storms to once again get kind of strong. Now, the question will be, I think, do we get any kind of discrete cells out ahead of this line that could potentially have a higher end chance of rotating with more effective inflow? That's something we'll have to kind of watch and wait and see. And per usual with severe weather, that's just how it's going to go. But either way, in that threat area is a real threat today. And then by the evening, I think even if we do have some more supercellular mode kind of activation during the afternoon, should go back into a squall line by this evening. This is getting into the midnight hour, and we could see some rumbles of thunder easily in Memphis, Jackson, back down eventually into the Baton Rouge and New Orleans area. And you'll notice to the north of that, just heavy rain into the Ohio Valley, probably just heavy rain even into Tennessee. Not much of a severe weather threat there, as the warm front doesn't really lift north until overnight, and then you lose the sunlight and heating. But then we get up tomorrow morning, and once again, we've got a leftover squall line, much like today, and we see this pretty often with severe weather, trying to work through the Huntsville area, Birmingham, up to central and eastern Tennessee, back down into southern Mississippi, and then even crossing Lake Pontchartrain there by your Friday morning, and once more by Friday afternoon could run into enough instability getting brought back into the forecast to check it out. We've got a couple of kind of strong individualized cells down here near southern Alabama and the Florida Panhandle that will have the potential of producing a tornado or two. But if that doesn't happen, definitely at least I think going to see some strong gusty winds out of that setup. And then all this works through the Carolinas, where a lot less of a severe weather threat, but could see still some rainfall nonetheless. Sorry, I kind of got caught off guard here. I'm looking at this other little blob of convection firing up behind the line, and it kind of has my interest, and I'm almost intrigued as to why that is there. So you know what? Let's do some on-the-fly meteorology and take a sounding and see if that could also pose a little bit of a threat. So this was not in the cards today, but let's check it out. So yeah, that looks a lot more like almost a cold core setup. By tomorrow afternoon, we've got a very kind of cool temperature at the surface, 50 degrees Fahrenheit, dew point of 46 is what this QT log P graph is showing me. And just very limited instability, but enough, folks, that I think this is actually a little bit of a cold core as that upper level low swings on through. We've got a very cold pocket of air moving over this area. That combined with some afternoon sun, you get enough instability that some storms could form, and these could actually produce some hail and graupel. So watch out for that tomorrow afternoon there through Huntsville and Nashville, should this model be right. Very interesting kind of setup there on the high resolution rapid refresh. So always fun to do that kind of meteorology on the fly there. And interesting stuff. All right, so let's zoom things out, talk about the rest of the storm. In fact, you know what? I'm going to change models back over to the same model we were just looking at because it's new and should go out far enough for us to kind of talk about everything. All right, so this afternoon, again, just rain through the Ohio and Tennessee Valley. That severe weather threat to the south. We continue into this evening, and this is when things get a little bit more interesting. Now, again, still just rain. However, you see where we have this surface low pressure? Well, on the back side here, a little bit of a deformation band of sorts forming, but it's not producing snow, at least on this model. But I will caution you, it would not take much dynamic cooling for what is kind of heavy rain here to be a very heavy wet snow. Again, if we kind of take a very quick sounding, I know normally I don't do this so much in the videos, yeah, temperature right around 44, so you know it's not there, but some models are a little bit closer to that being snow. So not to say it will happen, but just one of those possibilities we'll watch. The bigger snow threat though is going to come right into this time frame. Here we go into Friday afternoon, also showing a pretty icy mess here over portions of Lake Erie. That's due to that very cold air at the surface on the lakes, due to kind of that ice beginning to work back over the lakes, and then that warmer air over. It looks like some freezing rain there over the lake itself. So if you happen to be on a boat out there, maybe be prepared for that. But overall, still rain for the I-95, Philadelphia up through Boston, New Jersey, Long Island. And then we get into the afternoon and the evening. We've got a band of snow beginning to set up here, even into the Detroit area, trying to get a little bit of snow on this model. But I think the heavier, more impactful snow will be into the interior of the Northeast. You see the Finger Lakes getting some snow here, Vermont, New Hampshire, back up towards Maine, seeing some of that snowfall, and that kind of continues as a nice band of snow. I think Boston going to be all rain. You're going to have to be north of there, up towards, again, New Hampshire, Vermont, the down east areas of Maine, and not a very long-lasting event, but a nice quick hitter. The evening of Friday, overnight Friday, and then here we go. This is waking up Saturday morning, and folks, it's gone. Again, not a very long-lasting storm, but long enough that we're going to see some snowy impacts. Now, how much snow? That's the million-dollar question. Let's take a look at some models. This is the GFS and kind of what it shows in snowfall totals. And you'll notice higher in totals to Vermont, New Hampshire, upstate New York, and Maine. But we take a look at a different model. Here's the European. I mean, it is just pitiful on the snowfall totals. Now, I think there is a point to be made here by the European. Again, I think the GFS is actually a little closer on the max totals. But if I show you the UK Met model, for example, I think this is probably the most likely scenario. You're kind of seeing these little splotches of snow, and you might be wondering, well, what's up with that? Well, this is telling me this is a very elevation-dependent winter storm. So if you're up high on the mountains into Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, back through the Adirondacks, and then some of these higher hills back towards Buffalo, you could get a pretty good little winter storm, a good 3 to 5, maybe 6 to 8 inch snow event, depending on exactly where you're at. But if you're down into the valleys, kind of these southern areas of New Hampshire, into the Hudson River Valley, less likely to get snow out of the setup. So I think actually this would probably be the most likely map. And I just realized that you cannot see the totals, or the totals at the bottom of the screen there. So that's kind of, I think, the most likely scenario, something between the GFS here and the European here. The European shows that more elevation-dependent snow event. The GFS shows the higher totals, and then something kind of in between would be like the UK Met here, which I think is probably the best kind of middle ground to use in a scenario like this. Alrighty, so that's the snow, that's the current storm. What's next? Well, we're going to be watching another storm system later this weekend. So we talked about those winter storm watches up into the Pacific Northwest. Here's Friday afternoon. We've got that big storm ongoing into the east. However, look what's happening back west. Another big area of rain and snow working into the Pacific Northwest. And what's going to happen here is it's going to cross the entire country. So heavy snow into the Cascades, the Northern Rockies. This is into Saturday, shown below. It just keeps on snowing, hence, again, those winter storm watches in effect. And then eventually that upper level energy gets kicked to the east and still dealing with snow in the Northern Rockies, but a piece of that going to break off to the east, and notice some snow breaking out once more. And also a little bit of not even a little bit, a pretty powerful cold front here. We've got kind of this, well, let me redraw that warm front. That warm front's not very pretty. We've got this pretty powerful cold front, and it's almost an Arctic front. Look at these very sharp temperature lines behind it. This is a strong push of cold air coming in behind our storm system, and then that's spring fever out ahead of it. So this storm is going to bring snow and active weather, but I think more importantly what it's going to do is set the stage for another storm next week. I know you're thinking, what are you talking about? Well, hear me out here and kind of watch what happens. This moves on through, does bring some snow into the interior Northeast, potentially the northern Great Lakes, UP of Michigan, Northern Thumb, the normal people who have been kind of winning here recently. But then what happens is a sharp boundary sets up right here. This is Tuesday, February 4th, so this is less than a week from now. See our 540 line, this first blue line you see, and kind of where this sets up. This is the boundary between pretty cold Arctic air to the north and borderline spring fever to the south. I think it's going to be kind of a nation divided next week. If you're down near the Gulf Coast, you're going to be thinking, all right, well, it's about summer. But if you're up into International Falls, the northern sections of the plains through the Dakotas, you're going to be thinking, all right, here's the winter I was promised. So the problem with that is what sets up in between. And I think the European ensembles are showing this pretty well. If we take a look at this map, these are our upper level height anomaly maps. Show this all the time on the channel. The red is a warmer air mass. The blue is a colder air mass. And watch what happens. This is this weekend. Here's that storm into the Pacific Northwest and back towards British Columbia. A piece of it going to break off and kind of set up that boundary for us by the early part of next week. Here it is. See that little blue breaking off. And then we'll pause it right around, see how far out we need to go. I think right here is probably the best place to go. Now, this is pretty far out in the time, but I think this general setup you see here is what it's going to look like over the first, we'll say 10 or so days of February, maybe even a little bit longer than that. We've got, again, kind of very strong zonal spring fever-like flow into the south, and then we've got much more kind of meridional troughing up into the north. And what happens in these setups, folks, is we get a feisty battleground zone between where that warm air and that cold air begin to clash and collide, and that's where we're going to run the threat of ice, snow, and rain, depending on what side of that boundary you're on. And I think the model's doing a good job at showing this. Let me go ahead and pull up the latest GFS model for this time frame, and we'll move it ahead. So here's the weekend storm, the kind of transitional storm that I said would set the stage for the next one. Here's that snow potential into Minnesota, the Dakotas, and into the interior Northeast. And then that boundary sets up, and watch what happens. This is next Tuesday into Wednesday. We begin to get some interaction here. We've got some ice and snow and rain beginning to break out across the heart of the country from Kansas, eventually into the mid-Atlantic, into the Northeast, beginning to see kind of a wintry mess. Heck, we've got ice in places as far south as Philadelphia, back towards Harrisburg, State College, Pittsburgh, through the Ohio Valley in that transitional battleground zone. And it's kind of wave after wave of wintry weather. And then you go a little further ahead in time, a stronger piece of energy by about the 8th or so of February. This one brings a feisty winter storm into the Northeast and borderline nor'easter there in about 7 to 10 days. Now, is that going to happen? Probably not, but the setup, I think, will. This kind of battleground zone with waves of precip coming through it could happen, and it's very possible we get a stronger piece of energy like that model shows that brings, a more powerful storm system that could have higher-end winter storm impacts is something that we'll definitely watch. Now, what about the European model? Let's keep on moving it ahead. Into that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday timeframe. Here it is now further north on the European, much further north. You see that icy zone further up into the Great Lakes region, and then kind of a lot more dry and calm and tranquil and more spring-like to the south. And then you can already see the model differences beginning, but still the idea is there of that battleground setting up. And then the European gets closer to the GFS by about day 10. In fact, they both show this kind of northeast snowstorm right around the 8th or so of February. Will it happen? We'll see. But again, you see the pattern, and then the European, I'll throw a bone to my friends in the south here, it even gets that cold air quite far south. And check this out, by about 11, 12 days from now, it even tries to return the chance of some sort of wintry precip to the southeast. Again, that's way out in the la-la land, but you get the idea. It's not going to stay warm forever. We're going to get this transitional battleground zone to set up. I'm feeling pretty confident about that. Now, the chance of freezing rain and snow, let's talk about it on the European ensembles here. The chance of significant amounts of ice, well, you can see that blossom of the chance by the middle of next week, right around February 5th into the 6th. The European, again, further north in the GFS operational run, we'll see if that's a trend, has its eyes set on New England into Michigan, through the Great Lakes, through even the Chicago area, a big metropolitan area that hasn't really seen a lot of winter weather in a while. Could this be your storm? Very possible by next week. You see that big blossom of ice potential, and then another potential right around day 10 with that secondary storm that we talked about. Now, what about snow? I know everyone wants snow, no one wants ice. Well, fortunately, it might not be that simple. However, I do think we will get some snow chances. Now, here we go. This is right around that first storm time frame, or at least after the transitional piece this weekend. Next week, highest chance for snow, again, going to be into the northern tier as that cold air first settles in, going to settle in further north. There from New England all the way over through the northern Great Plains. A lot of snow potential into the northern Rockies as well, even down into the Sierra Nevadas, and we could use it down there. So hoping that pans out. And then you see that big snow chance. And then as we go further ahead into time, the snow chances sneak further south by about 10 days to 15 days out from now as that cold boundary tries to wiggle its way southward. And that is something that we will absolutely need to watch for. Alrighty, folks, that's all I got for you on this Thursday. Hopefully you found it interesting. We've been in a little bit of a lull, but I think this is going to kickstart things again to start February. And who knows, if we get a big storm, might have to double up on videos again and hopefully do a live stream or two. We'll say I kind of miss doing the lives. It was a lot of fun when we had the active weather, and hopefully we can get back to that. And hopefully I can bring a couple guests on as well. Should be fun. Alrighty, y'all have a great one. Stay safe, stay warm, and have a great rest of your day. I'll see you all next time.